Should you invest in Bitcoin today? 2 days ago, Bitcoin hit $60,000. Prices it has not seen for a very long time, and an over 50% decline from its all-time highs in October. Usually, this would mark some interest. Bitcoin obviously being on a 50% discount, half the price than it was just 4 months ago. However, I'm not so sure. What I want to do in this video is really break down my thoughts. I've been a crypto investor since 2018, so at least 8 years now. I've spent around about 20 years investing in traditional markets also. So I have a little bit of experience. I've been through three full bear markets with Bitcoin, or should I say, this is my third full bear market with Bitcoin. I was here in 2018. I was also here in 2022. So I'm going to give my insight and opinion on what I believe people should do in this situation. Obviously, I will add this disclaimer. None of what I'm saying right now is financial advice. Please do not take anything that I tell you in today's video as investment advice. I'm purely putting the question out there whether, in my opinion, Bitcoin is a good investment today at today's prices. It's currently 69,000. It's on a bit of a bounce. Interestingly, that was the high back in 2021. We got up to 69,000. So you might have heard a lot about Bitcoin over the last 4 years. Obviously, a lot of development has happened. It's got a lot of positive publicity. Institutions have started to adopt Bitcoin. Notably, certain institutions have been buying a lot of Bitcoin, which has driven the price a lot higher. Plus, we've had spot ETFs now approved. So access to Bitcoin and also, I would say, just the general opinion and feeling around Bitcoin is that this is a serious asset class, that Bitcoin is here to stay, that it has a place in a well diversified portfolio. Now that access is easier than ever. Even financial advisors can start to put their clients into Bitcoin via the spot ETFs. So it is a very, very different investment proposition from what it was in 2021. And of course, we've come down from much, much higher price levels. So a 50% dip in what has been one of the best performing assets, I think, in history over the last sort of 11, 12 years is something to pay attention to. And I'm going to jump in on the charts and show you what I'm seeing. And I'm going to let you know, am I buying here? Am I waiting? I'm going to let you know in this video. So here you can see the weekly chart of Bitcoin on the screen. And you can see here the asset class has been very, very volatile. We've had these explosive run-ups. If we actually go all the way back, here you can see Bitcoin's inception back in 2009. We had a massive, massive run-up in 2013, and then another massive run-up in 2017. You'll notice that 2013 and 2017 are 4 years apart. 4 years later, we had another explosive run up in 2021. And then this time around, obviously our latest bull market, we had an explosive run up, but that started a lot earlier. That started not 4 years later, in line with the previous two bull markets, but that actually started 2 years later. So we had the top in 2021, and by 2023, we were already starting to make our way significantly higher. And we actually made a new all-time high in 2024, which was a slight difference in what we'd seen in the past. But ultimately, Bitcoin topped out at the end of 2025, 4 years later. So what we can tell from this is that Bitcoin goes through these 4 year cycles, and typically it follows the same path: 1 or 2 explosive years higher, followed by a year of downside, and then a year correcting, albeit some sort of bumps and dips and pumps in between. But broadly speaking, that is the path we see. Things really start to get explosive in that final year of the bull run, and then we go into a 1 year downturn. And in terms of where we are right now, if we look at, say, for example, the previous cycle, it seems like we're probably around this area where we were in the first half of 2022. I say the first half because rather than the first quarter, because when we actually broke through our lows of 2021, this actually happened out in May. And if we look at the current cycle, you can see that we've actually broken through those lows in 2025. So the last year of the bull market, we've actually broken those now in February. So actually, that's 3 months earlier than when we broke those in the last cycle. And we've got to ask ourselves, what does this mean? Does it mean that potentially we're following a different path, or are things just accelerating? I mean, if we look at this bull run, we made a new all-time high in March of 2024, which was before Bitcoin's halving. Bitcoin halves every 4 years. So the last Bitcoin halving was in April of 2024. 4 years earlier than that, in April of 2020, um, we saw the Bitcoin halving, the previous Bitcoin halving. And if we look at where the price was back then, it was significantly lower. And we were nowhere near an all-time high. And we actually made the new all-time high above our 20,000 level. It wasn't until the end of 2020. However, this time around, we made it at the start of the halving year, which was 2024. So things have accelerated by several months this time around. And potentially that means we're going to accelerate when it comes to the bear market as well. Nobody knows for sure, but there are arguments to be made that we could actually bottom out sooner. So if we're just looking at general price action, and this is something I've talked a lot about, by the way, I became bearish on cryptos early October, right at the highs here, when I saw that we couldn't get through and push to new all-time highs. And since then, I've really had a bearish lean. I mean, I've been fully out of spot positions, sold all of my crypto, and I've just been looking to trade the swings in this market. And I think that's the best way to go at the moment is not to be too heavily invested. But of course, like I say, Bitcoin has now fallen from its all-time high 52%. Over a 50% decline, I think that is going to be an area that people start to get interested. And I remember what really got me into Bitcoin sort of back in the day was I heard about the run up in 2017, and I was very much looking for an entry on this when it started to come down. And as soon as Bitcoin crossed below 10,000, that's when I started to get interested. I said to myself, well, that's a 50% decline. That's probably a decent entry point for the long term. And of course, from that level, let's try and catch 10,000. That'll do. I was pretty much offside from that entry for the best part of, I mean, 69 weeks. So what's that? About a year and a half until 2019. And then after that, I was still holding, still offside, onside. And it wasn't really until later on in 2020 that I actually went on side with those positions, and obviously the price never looked back. And I mean, I'll never forget this period here. This was just an absolutely insane period. Just felt like Bitcoin was going to go up forever. You just wake up every night. It would be hard to sleep. It was just like everything you'd had conviction in, everything you kind of put your whole life into for the last 3 years had all started to pay off from that 2019 to 2021 period. So yes, some similarities this time around. Obviously, making the new high. Obviously, it didn't quite last as long, and it wasn't quite as parabolic or as explosive. But I think that's to be understood when you're dealing with an asset which is getting more and more mature. Obviously, the types of buyer of Bitcoin are starting to change a lot now, as we've seen more institutions come into the game. So that kind of brings us to where we are now. And to be honest with you, like I say, I've been trading this on the short term. I identified this bear flag here. Also identified the inability to get back above this trend line, and also the fact that Bitcoin had lost its 50-week moving average that it had been holding as support throughout the whole entirety of the bull market. So that was a major break for me, and that's when I said, okay, the bear market is probably here. This I kind of said, all right, that's a rejection. I don't know how long this is going to last, but my reasons for getting out with crypto were that if Bitcoin was quite weak, I thought, okay, I probably am going to have an opportunity to buy Bitcoin back closer towards 100,000. Why don't I sell and then look to get back in? And then I said, if Bitcoin struggles and comes down here, altcoins probably get hit hard. So I don't really want to be holding altcoins. But from there, we were just never able to regain strength. And of course, we lost the 50 week. So now we've come down to the 100 week. We've lost the 100 week moving average. And when Bitcoin loses the 100 week moving average, we almost always go down to the 200 week moving average. And this is actually a post I put on my X account. This is back in December, so last year. This is just talking about Bitcoin still holding on to the trend line, but a close below likely brings price down to the 200-week MA. And lo and behold, that is exactly what we've come into. We've come down to that 200-week MA, as you can see in this box here. Now, we haven't quite touched it. However, I do think we've also got this descending trend line from these highs back in 2024. And I do think to myself, if we do come down for one more low, we will push into that area. And for me, I would have been a lot more confident in this low here if we'd actually pushed into this 200-week moving average and maybe pierced it and gone into this trend line. I think from there, that would have been a stronger, or should we say, a more high confident long. However, given where we are here, I'm not convinced. Okay, I think it's probably going to work out and things are probably going to turn around from here. But I'm just not 100% convinced whether we don't go in for one more low first. But look, I think a bounce is overdue and the bounce probably takes us up here. And if I just show you where I'm getting this bounce percentage from, if we actually look in the past and see when this actually sort of broke down, we can see we did go on a bounce from here. And I might have to go on the daily to show this properly. So let's just go back to the last. Okay, here we go. So look, when we took these lows out last time around, we actually went about 11.5% under those lows. Okay, I think it was closer to 12. Just want to make sure it's picked up that correctly. So yeah, we came about 12% under those lows. And then when we got the bounce went about 28% up. So let's look at where we are right now because we're doing something very similar. We've come down 19% under those lows. I actually didn't think that was as far, but it looks like it is. Unless the reason for that is I'm looking at a different chart. Let's just go on this one. So when we broke those lows, this is on Coinbase. Yeah, we went 12% below those lows. And if we look at the low here, we can see we've done 19%. So actually, uh, it is 19%. We've actually gone lower, quite a lot lower. And I was thinking, so where was 12%? 12% was like here around about 65. So yeah, we shot through by quite a bit. So things are happening slightly differently here. But I mean a 28% rally would get us to around about 77. So I'm thinking to myself, that could be on the cards here. We could see that bounce up to around about sort of 77K. Another thing we can do is we can look at our Fibonacci tracement. So if we come down here, we can see from this swing high That takes us around about to the zero point 0.5 fib. So maybe we go a little bit higher into around about sort of 79, 80K. We've obviously got 80K, which was this low. So I think there's going to be a bit of a cluster of resistance coming in here at around about this level. So maybe that's where we backtest into. But I just want to show you if we do come down again, we do have some pretty major support in here. Obviously, we've got all of these lows in play. We've got our 200-week moving average. We've got this descending trend line. So I do like this general zone for a bounce. And look, I do think this general zone down to around about sort of the low 50s can probably hold price up for the majority of the first half of this year, probably going into summer. So I think honestly, what happens from here, I think a lot is going to depend on what the stock market does. But if we just go back to where we are right here, can we go higher than this? Yeah, we can maybe pump into this 618. If we look at the moving averages just on a daily, these are still quite far away from price. If we look at them on a weekly, we can see the importance of the 21 EMA. So if I just actually add the 21 EMA is this solid, this thicker red line here. We can see these are EMA bands that I use. These are flipped basically from green to red now. So we'd expect price going into these bands to get rejected. So these will come down pretty fast and maybe price could bounce around. Obviously, if these EMA bands line up with either this 50% fib or this 618 fib level, I think these could be decent targets for this bounce to reject, probably in March, and have another go at these lows. And like I say, providing the stock market holds up, I don't foresee this cluster or this area being broken just yet. I think that is quite unlikely. And the alternative path is if the floor falls out from the stock market, then I do think we could sort of bounce around here and then come down lower. And where do I have as a lower target? Probably around about 40,000. I think 40,000 is definitely on the cards. And if we just go back to what happened last time that we broke through the prior year support, we can see from that bounce, we then went down a further 45%. From the low, that was a further 30%. So hypothetically, what would that mean from the current low? Assuming the current low holds, 30% is down to 40,000. 45% is also, if we bounced up to around about 77, is down to 40,000. So that's what gets me to the 40,000. The other thing I wanted to bring your attention to is just zooming out and looking at this on a very, very long-term time scale, because we can see here we've had this upsloping trend line in play, which has capped prices to the upside, really powerful, connecting the highs from 2017, 2021, and what do you know, it's connected the highs from 2025. And then on the downside, we've got the 2020 lows. We've got the 2022 lows, obviously the 2020 lows were the COVID lows. And are we going to come into this again later on this year? Because this is down at currently, well, currently, if we were to go straight there, it's around about sort of 28, 29,000. Obviously, this is going to rise up, but by the end of this year, say October time, this is coming in at around about sort of 32,000. So I think to myself, there's two ways this can go. I think we either get another quick drop down to 41, and I think from that level, we can then try and sort of base out a bit. But I think ultimately we can come down to that trend line. Um, and look, this is probably not going to go in on much beyond the end of this year. But assuming that this year, maybe at the end of this year, the stock market corrects, I think will come down and I think Bitcoin will bottom out and maybe this will happen around about 32,000 or maybe it'll happen a bit slower but still come down to around about 32,000. So am I so I'll answer the question, but obviously I'm trying to give you all of the evidence. I'm trying to show you what I'm seeing as a Bitcoin investor with experience. Okay. I think ultimately we get down here. The path that we get down here and how fast we get down here depends, I think, on what the stock market does. Now, the stock market is currently showing some signs of weakness. We'll take a very, very quick look at the Nasdaq. Um, it's a little bit messy, and I think ultimately what I've been calling for, because we can see we're starting to disrespect the 21 EMA. We have closed above it, but that's a long wick through it. You don't want to see the market starting to disrespect these EMA bands because when you do, the chances are that you're going to fall through both of them and find support somewhere below them, or you're gonna go into a potential sort of downtrend where you come down a lot harder. So that's one thing to be aware of. However, I think at some point we get a decent correction in the stock market, and what I'm really targeting is this 50-week moving average. I mean, you can see we tested it in 2024. We were obviously much further down in 2023. We tested it in 2025. Obviously, the gap between these two was not huge. Uh, I mean, that's 29 weeks. But if you see from when we were last at it, I mean, we're getting on now for 38 weeks. Does it go on a bit longer? It can do. And there can be periods of time where we don't test it for a very long time. I mean, from getting above it to then testing it again here was all the way up at 93 weeks. But I don't think we're in this type of environment again, where we've got massive sort of risk on massive rate cuts, where we've got a falling dollar. I mean, the dollar looks like it's starting to bottom out and could be starting to turn around. So what I'm trying to say is I think there's going to be a dip and it depends. I think we'll get a dip sort of April, May in the stock market. How deep it is, I'm not too sure, but I think we'll get a deep then and potentially we'll get one right at the end of the year. So what does this mean for Bitcoin? So again, I think if we get a dip at the end of the year, I think this low can hold maybe for a few months, maybe we go slightly under it. But I think for the majority of the summer at least, if a big dip doesn't come until later on in the year, I think Bitcoin survives until the stock market dumps out later on in the year. If the dip actually comes sooner, then I think we can actually break this low a lot sooner. Um, and then Bitcoin probably struggles. And this would really, I mean, this would probably happen under, like I say, pretty risk-off conditions for the majority of the year until the stock market starts to turn around. But ultimately, I think we're going to the same place. And if we just zoom out, like I say, you want to sell on this line and you want to buy on this line. It really is as simple as that for me. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Bitcoin trades very, very nicely technically as an asset, especially on the longer term, as you can see from this chart. So then to answer the question that I asked at the start of the video, is now a good time to buy Bitcoin? I actually think no. I think wait. I think lower prices are coming. You've seen my target at around about 32,000. That is where I will be going all in on Bitcoin. No matter what's happening geopolitically, no matter what's happening with the stock market, I think that is going to be an area for generational buying on the Bitcoin price. Like I say, should you buy now? Maybe you get a 10%, maybe you get a 15% pump from the current prices. And the trap is that a lot of investors will see that price action and think, that's it, we're so back, Bitcoin's back above 70,000. I should have bought at 60. I don't want to miss the low, and they'll start to pile in, only to see prices potentially fall another 50% from there. That for me is too much risk to take on as an investor personally. So I won't be buying any Bitcoin, especially if it gets above 70,000. I think at a minimum, we will come back down and we will retest that low. We will hit probably 58, 57, 56,000 around that 200-week moving average. And we'll probably need to go sideways around those levels. And who knows if the stock market just keeps on ripping and Bitcoin starts to catch a tailwind, potentially that would be for me the best case scenario would be Bitcoin in the high 50,000 range. Like I say, I'd prefer a move down to 40,000. I think 40,000 would also be a very, very good place to buy Bitcoin. So, if I'm looking at DCA Bitcoin myself, I'd be getting some orders around about sort of 58, 59,000, just below that 60,000 low. I'd be looking to accumulate a bit more around about 40,000. And if we got down sub 40,000 into like that 30, $35,000 range, that's where I'd really go in heavy handed. And I think the other thing to bear in mind is timing as well. Like I'm very, very, very reluctant to deploy too much capital too soon because I think to myself, Bitcoin will likely bottom out at the end of this year, which means probably October time, give or take a month. So if we're around about sort of sub 40,000 and it's October, gee, I'm going to be putting lots of capital to work at those prices, no matter what Bitcoin is. If Bitcoin manages to stay above 50,000 and we're in October, I'm probably going to be buying in the 50,000s. And if we do one final flush down, okay, I'm going down a little bit. If we go from say, 50,000 down to 40,000, right, I'm 20% off, but I'll just DCA there. But I really think for now, it's just time to be patient and it's time to let the market come to those levels. So, to answer the question, is it time to buy Bitcoin now? For me, it's no. For you, it could be different. If your time horizon is very, very, very long term, I don't think it's a bad time to think about buying Bitcoin off a 50% drop from its highs. I think that is definitely the sort of drawdown that gets buyers interested. And in the past, it got me very interested. But I want to just explain, I still think things can get worse. A lot of people are calling for the price just to start going vertical tomorrow, go back straight above 100K later this year, new all-time highs for 2026. I don't believe it is likely or probable, and I don't think it's smart to be expecting so much so quickly, especially after we've broken structure into a bear market structure now. So you have to anticipate lower prices later on this year, and you have to be well prepared for that. And that's exactly the way I'm playing this. So, like I say, not financial advice, purely for informational purposes only. Make of it what you will. But for me, it's a no. Obviously, let me know in the comments if you are buying, if you see things differently. Perhaps I'm missing something. But it doesn't matter what narrative's out there. It doesn't matter that the ISM is going up or that a new country is adopting Bitcoin or new companies are adopting Bitcoin or some politician has said positive things about Bitcoin. None of it is going to change that price direction. Trend above everything. All of these narratives, they come and go every cycle. We hear them all the time. It's not going to change the direction of the Bitcoin price anytime soon. It needs time to fall and then it needs time to go sideways. It needs time to get boring. Usually these bear markets, they shake out holders via price. Obviously, price declines. People are seeing and staring at losses. They don't like that. They want to cut. They want to get out. They don't want to lose any more money. So they sell. Or it shakes investors out through time. So you'll see the price probably later this year or even early next year go through a phase where the price is really boring. Bitcoin is stuck within maybe a $10,000 range and is doing nothing. and you've got other markets that are starting to take off. Maybe the stock market's making new all-time highs and Bitcoin is lagging behind. That is also very frustrating because people look around and they say, why is my money stuck here? I should have bought this. I should have bought that. You know what? I've had enough. I'm getting out. This stuff is dead. And that is actually the time that you want to be accumulating, that you want to be locked in, that you want to be making your buys. And that usually is right at the end of the bear market. So, yeah, I'm thinking to myself, just give yourself some time. Don't get too stressed. Don't get too caught out. I do think this breakdown confirms that the market is weak and that the market is likely going lower before it goes higher. So that is my big take, and that is the thing to take away. Obviously, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have done, please do smash the like, hit subscribe for more content like this, and I will talk to you all again.